What up, family? Hope you're holding up. I know with all the chaos going on, it's hard to keep track of things and it's hard to stay focused. It's hard to stay motivated. But before we get into this episode, I would like to direct you to the Black Panthers website, which is theblackpanthers.us or the bpp.us. Please go to this website and show your support for the Black Panther Party before we get into this episode, if you can. And please donate if you can. The Black Panthers need your help in expansion. They need help in expanding their programs that help local communities and help expand chapters. This is how we get things rolling here in the United States. I know that we keep preaching to you, the audience, to leave the duopoly of the Democrat and Republican Party. And oftentimes we do that without offering an alternative. Well, this episode is the alternative, and this is how we actually get real change done. The Black Panther Party has proven itself in history that they can raise communities out of poverty. They can raise effective programs as an alternative to the United States government and duopoly system. And this is the beginning of something. I hope that this is the beginning of something very concrete as opposed to just political rhetoric and complaining. So this, in my opinion, is the first episode that we have done, which actually directs you, the audience, to a real system of change as opposed to just complaining about the current system. So please go check out the website, donate if you can, try to get involved, try to see where you can fit in with the Black Panther Party and the Panther Party and how you can help out. This is the direction that Colonial Outcasts has decided to take, as opposed to just us complaining about geopolitics and local domestic politics. Either way, enjoy the episode. As always, love you, fam.
What up, family? Welcome to or welcome back to Colonial Outcast, the principled anarchist podcast that is about to break a cardinal rule of anarchy, political affiliation. I consider this episode to be very historic for our channel for many reasons. We have always made it a strict policy of our platform to never support any political party. But in about 7 seconds, however, we're going to break that rule and announce not only our support, but also our official partnership with the only political entities in the U.S. history that, in my humble opinion, is worthy of any official authority: the Black Panther Party and the Panther Party. As some of you may know, I joined the Panthers last year after I interviewed who would become my future boss, National Minister of Defense for the Black Panther Party and the Panther Party, Bunchy. And in doing so, the trajectory of my personal and public world completely changed. And to just add a personal note for context to preface this episode, after visiting Palestine some 20 years ago and transforming from a brainwashed evangelical Zionist Republican nationalist, I immediately became disillusioned with the U.S. government system after seeing how Palestinians lived and thrived with a culture of honor and community mindset, despite the most sophisticated form of tyranny against them. I abandoned all affiliation with Zionism, evangelicalism, republicanism, and became an anarchist at age 19. Of course, I've never associated with the Democrats, so years later I experimented with libertarianism, which just proved to be a cucked, harmless excuse of an alternative. But now, for the first time in my life, I found a political home, a true revolutionary family who do not compromise and will not accept anything less than a full liberation of all peoples from the depraved elites who have enslaved and sacrificed us for their golden idol of capital. Since then, I have been dogged by a very common question from conservative and liberal partisans when I emphasize the critical need to stop engaging in the Democrat and Republican system. It usually goes like this: well, Mark, what's your solution? Then if voting isn't the answer, you never suggest any alternatives. To which I say, touche, good point. And this is my answer. So it gives me a tremendous level of honor to introduce you to my Vanguard family, the national leadership of both the Black Panther Party and the Panther Party. This is Bunchy Carter, National Minister of Defense for the Black Panther Party.
All power to the people. How you doing,
All
comrade?
power to the people, comrade. And this is the Minister of Education for the Panther Party, Doc Molotov.
All power. What's up?
Good, Doc. Good to see you, boss. Good to see you, Doc. It's been a long time since I've seen your face, Bunchy. I'm proud to make this announcement for a partnership. Since I met y'all, it's changed my life, it's changed my perspective, and it's given me confidence to go forward with revolutionary action and revolutionary messaging to the public. So before we get into this, first of all, welcome to the shit show, the anarchist shit show of Colonial Outcast. Sorry about the mess when you walked in the door, comrades, but Greg and I didn't have Panther organizational skills when we started, but now we do. So I'm just going to get right into it and address what's on everybody's mind. Like, what's the deal? Everybody thought the Black Panthers were a relic of history, but here you are, son of a Panther, and they're very much alive. They're very much dedicated to revolution in the fullest sense of the word, in accordance with the old legacy. So, Bunchy, what happened? Where did this begin? How did you become the Minister of Defense for the Black Panther Party, and what was the genesis of all this?
Well, there was actually a period very recently, just about 5 or 6 years ago. I'd say actually open the window a little further, maybe about 7 to 8 years ago. Things started occurring, and it's the normal cycle that happens when things start occurring that happen on a regular basis, but the media deems it necessary to highlight certain things at certain times because we need certain responses in order to keep this machine moving. So what do we start highlighting? Well, hey, let's start with this kid in Florida that got unnecessarily stalked and profiled by this neighborhood watch guy and got murdered. Oh, and then we can add some more on top of that. Let's add a few more to turn their eyes in that direction. Well, unfortunately and fortunately, the thing that they didn't take into account was that when COVID took place and the world shut down, it gave people an opportunity to become a little more in touch with their feelings, for better or worse. And unfortunately for the system, in some regards, anger was a pervasive emotion at that time, because of some of the things that were taking place. And George Floyd and Sandra Bland and Breonna Taylor probably were the biggest catalysts for that movement. Here in Washington, we had Saeed Joaquin, Mandy Ellis. Man, there's a whole lot of too many. Benny Branch, my God. Anyway, we ain't gonna get into all of that right now. But needless to say, the thing that I noticed as we were out, as the protests were taking place and people were marching in the streets, the one thing that was missing was organization. There's no organization. You're angry, and that's good. And you're ready to act, and that's good. But if you're unclear on what the action should be, unclear on why that action should take place, and unclear on what the ramifications of that action could be after the fact, maybe there's some more planning that should go into this. And as I was observing what was happening, I kept hearing the same thing over and over and over again. Man, we really need the Black Panther Party. Man, it would be great to have the Black Panther Party. Well, it just so happens I was in the park one day, and Obaniah X walked up to me and said, "Hey, man, I heard a lot about you. I'm thinking about starting a branch of the Black Panther Party here." The rest is history, so to speak.
Absolutely.
The rest is history.
But there's something a little different about this iteration. We have what's called the Panther Party. And I'll open this with a quick funny story. I went as a Panther publicly for the first time to march with the Chicano moratorium, and wearing my Panther beret that I just had sewn on because I didn't have the official patch. I didn't get a chance to get one in time, with my, OCP Army fatigues. And as I was marching with the Chicanos, a girl came up to me who said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Because I gave off very copy vibes because I tend to do that. And I said, "Well, I'm with the Panther Party." And she says, "The Panther Party?" You're like, "Yeah, we're connected with the Black Panther Party." And she says, "But you're not black." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's going to be a long time to explain this. So I completely understand where you're at right now." So, but it's an example of why people might be confused that a white boy is considered a Panther. Doc being the Minister of Education for the Panther Party. Doc, do you want to give us some history of why that is? Why we have some people who are not black that call themselves Panthers now?
Absolutely. So the first thing we need to understand, right? And I will get into the actual history, but what we need to understand is that fundamentally the issue is what it's always been, right? And the issue is the exploitation of human beings by an elite, right? And that's been a problem for a long time. Right now, it's a problem that occurs under imperialism, under capitalism. But before that, it happened under feudalism. Before that, it happened, in ancient slave societies, like when we're talking about the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, right? But the point is, it's always fundamentally been a class struggle, right? And it's always been a situation where the majority of humanity is exploited by a very small few, right? And there is a race aspect to that, right? And there's many reasons that there has to be, right? Because this sort of exploitation relies on colonialism. It relies on slavery. It relies on these things, and it relies on a level of exploitation that inherently creates resistance. And dividing the people along certain lines, dividing people along racial lines so that they don't unify as a class against you, is a tactic that's used, right, by the ruling class, right? And so is creating these ideas of racial hierarchies that justify colonialism, colonization, which is the forced, seizure of people, the forced seizure of land and resources that can be used to sort of kickstart the growth of an oppressive system. So that is to say, the oppression of that Black people within the United States experienced, that's unique and uniquely oppressive, right? That is not to say that exploitation is not a nearly universal reality for human beings on this earth, or that we aren't exploited by essentially the same people in the same system, right? We have an exploitative system that's keeping us all down, right? And the Black Panther Party was always about fighting that, right? It was about self-defense, right? It was about defending the Black community against oppression and exploitation, and the enforcers of that exploitation and oppression. And it became very clear to Huey Newton, it became very clear to Fred Hampton, to George Jackson, that this was a fight that was, it should be led by the Black Panthers, it should be led by the Black Vanguard. It was not a fight that is exclusive to the Black community, right? And for that reason, Huey Newton, at one point, he was asked on television in an interview, what should white people do if they agree with what the Black Panther Party is doing? And he said, start a White Panther Party, because we need your help, right? Because we're all in this fight together, even if it affects us differently. And that's what John Sinclair, Lenny Sinclair, Pun Plamondon, and a few others did, right? They made a White Panther Party. Now, for us, a few years back, after Bunchy Carter, Open Aisle X, and a few others restarted the Black Panther Party in Tacoma, Addo Equitas, the founder of or I wouldn't say founder, but the initial chairman of the Panther Party, of this iteration of the Panther Party, saw fit to bring it back. And he sought out founding members of the original White Panther Party, I won't say who, and got their blessing to bring that the White Panther Party back. And they told him at the time that we would have to change the name, and that the White Panther Party was not going to fly anymore, and that even at the time it kind of had some issues as a name. And we tried. We flew under the banner of the White Panther Party for a few months. It did not last very long. It led to issues. I remember I was walking around on a college campus with Addo and Bunchy, and I had the shirt, the White Panther Party shirt on, and I got some looks.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad y'all figured that out before I went out there to the Chicano moratorium as the White Panther, and that would have been this, as bad as that situation was, it would have been a lot worse out there.
That would have been priceless. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's heavy.
But we took white out of the name. We formed the we changed the name to the Panther Party. And what it is it is a party that represents or that operates in solidarity with the Black Panther Party, that operates under the ideology of revolutionary intercommunalism along with the Black Panther Party, but accepts members of all from all communities, right? So it's a place that anyone who wants to be a Panther, wants to be engaged in the Panther struggle, wants to support the Black Panther Party and work with them, but is not Black. It's a place for them.
Now this go, and I'm not going to try to get into specific names here, but this does go in contrary to this system that we between the Black Panther Party and the Panther Party goes stands in stark contrast to. There's a lot of decoys of the Black Panther Party out there. There's a lot of lookalikes. Let's just put it that way.
Fugazi. Call it what it is. It's a lot of
Fugazi. Of the Black Panther Party out there. And but Bunchy, that did not settle well with you because it went very much against the original legacy. And can you at least, however comfortable you are talking about that, about what was not satisfactory for you as a true Black Panther who is the son of a Black Panther?
I think the biggest thing for me is when it comes down to the structure of how the Black Panther Party was put together. If you think about if you think about the layout, it kept one person from being too powerful. The way it was designed was to inspire democratic process across the board. One person can't make this decision. We as a collective central committee have to make that decision. Some of the things that I saw from some of the other organizations that were trying to bring us under their banners in the beginning, it was very very singular in regards to leadership. This person's the top person, everybody else falls under that person, and if somebody else rises to that rank, you have to start another chapter, whatever the case may be. And I was like, that sounds ridiculous. Why would we do that? More importantly than that, though, there was no 10-point platform that existed within their program. And I thought to myself, how can you call yourself a Panther and not utilize the one stone cold principle that it was built on? Without the 10-point platform and program, people would have no concept of why they would live in a dying every single day wearing their logo. So that troubled me. And so that there was no dedication to the concept of intercommunalism or to the concept of actual solidarity across lines in order to bring about liberation. And I asked myself on a regular basis, how can you call yourself a person dedicated to freedom, but then try to dictate who we struggle with? That's contradictory as fuck. Am I right? Pardon my French, but that sounds crazy, right? Okay, I just want.
There's no pardoning French here on Colonial Outcasts. We've already broken that around.
We don't make excuses for the French.
None, never that. Absolutely. Nah, that's kind of where it is, though. I think in order to call yourself a Panther, there's certain things that there's certain things that just align with that, and to me that takes the whole onus off a lot of the BS that falls on the Panther Party out of play, because at the end of the day, it's about being a Panther. Black Panther is a very specific kind of Panther, a very specific purpose to that Panther. But the concept, the ideology, is what makes you a Panther. And all of the people who follow that ideology aren't Black. So,
yeah, absolutely. And no, definitely not. And one thing that really sold me on the Panthers was your wisdom and your intercommunal spirit, your attitude about cross-sectionalism. Our first interaction was centered around the solidarity between the rednecks and Black communities, how pivotal that is. And while it may seem random, why would you choose black people and rednecks as like such an important part of global revolution? Well, it's because of the contrast that is between the two and how they've been pit against each other. There is no two groups on this planet that have been pit against each other with more investment of propaganda, billions, in fact, than the rednecks and Black people. Those are the two, because they know, the ruling class knows, if those two groups form a bond and an alliance, then it's game over. It's fucking done. There's
Absolutely.
we're talking about the largest revolutionary army the history has ever seen, 100 million strong, and armed and pissed off at the ruling class. So they can't have that happen. So it takes a lot of investment to keep that separation. Constant psyops to seed racism. And
I mean, I don't know why people would think that oppression would sting worse in the projects than they do in the barnyard. It's all the same.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Same thing. So I mean, like Doc said, it manifests differently because of the people and the reasoning behind those people being oppressed. That's what makes it different. But other than that, being denied your basic liberty as a human is the same, regardless of how you look at that. Whether you're looking at it from the scope of someone on the Gaza Strip, or you're looking at it from the standpoint of somebody in Cabrini Green. Well, Cabrini Green don't exist no more, but Old Block in Chicago, or in San Francisco, in the Fillmore, wherever they might be, the oppression is still the same. It just look different.
Yeah.
So,
now, before we go on to the important topic of intercommunalism, and before I shut this door on these other iterations of Black liberation that are out there, other versions of the Black Panther Party, it begs the question of nationalism. And I would like to go into a little bit about Huey P. Newton's journey out of nationalism and his evolution of thought in those regards, and why his transparency and going through that evolution, that personal evolution within himself, was so important to formulating what the Black Panther Party became and what it is today through you. And it's the topic of nationalism. It's especially when it comes to the Black community, is very understandable. Given the oppression, there's a desire for a national sovereignty, you know. However, as Huey pointed out, nationalism in general as a concept will always be weaponized against the people that it's supposedly supposed to liberate, right? And I think that this quick history that I'm about to give, that is very familiar to you, no doubt, is very important for the times that we're in right now, especially with these seated, astroturfed racial divisions that are going on out of fear that the working class might unite. And it's on the topic of Black nationalism. Black nationalism, historically, the biggest problem with them is most of them have been known to work with the feds. Historically has been seated by the feds to prevent cross-sectional solidarity. And we're going to go into Ron Karenga, founder of the US or US organization, and later known for creating Kwanzaa, became a what did I say? What happened?
It just made my head hurt. But go ahead, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
He became a rival of the Black Panther Party in the late 1960s Los Angeles. Ooh. With his brand of cultural nationalism clashing against Panthers' revolutionary socialism. The FBI's COINTELPRO program exploited these tensions by spreading disinformation to pit groups against each other, culminating in the 1969 UCLA shootings where US members killed Black Panther leaders Bunchy Carter and John Higgins. While some view Karenga as an opportunist who betrayed the broader struggle, others argue he and his followers were manipulated by state repression, but the outcome was the same. The Panthers in Los Angeles were fatally weakened, while Karenga's US organization endured, leaving a legacy of suspicion and division in the Black liberation movement. And Karenga and his U.S. organization were known to have working relationships with the LAPD during the late 1960s. So this is one of the biggest problems with Black nationalism, is they have a history of being agents for the feds. And there's multiple reasons for that. And I just want to hear your take on that real quick, and why that has been a huge part in you or structuring the Panthers the way you have to avoid that kind of thing.
Well, I think the biggest thing for us has always been think globally, act locally. And if you do that, it kind of takes the top off of nationalism in and of itself. First and foremost, to be a nationalist, it would have to imply that there was a nation that you had some relationship to, right? That's the first part of that. So then my question for any disenfranchised person in America is, what nation exactly is it that you are pledging your allegiance to? What nation have you existed within that acted in your best interest, in your best material interest? So I think when it comes down to it, first of all, fuck Ron Karinga. I just want to say that. I'm sorry, I had to say it. I've been holding it this whole time, but I had to
Go
say
ahead.
it.
Go ahead.
If you need any further proof that he was working with the system, you look no further than Kwanzaa, and I'll leave that there. But look no further than Kwanzaa. But yeah, nationalism in and of itself is dangerous. It's dangerous to the formulation of successful parties, as you mentioned previously. It is a gateway for them to have interactions with what's the word I'm looking for? Shit.
It's okay. It's late. It's late. I pulled you guys on a late night recording, man.
It's okay. But realistically speaking, I mean, when you even the term nationalist, and the implication of nation would imply that there is some connection to something greater than yourself. But then you have to ask yourself who's in control, who's pulling the strings, who's pushing the buttons, and those are the people who you end up in bed with once you link yourself to a nationalist struggle of any sort. So yeah, those people are crazy, man. Fuck Ron Karinga. Yeah.
Well, go ahead. No, Doc, go ahead.
I think that what you have to look at, especially if you're looking at like Huey's kind of transition from a nationalist to an intercommunalist standpoint, when they wrote the original 10-point platform, and he talks about this, right? They were thinking, it was always based on Marxist-Leninist principles, and it was always based on a Leninist conception of nationalism, right? Because based on sort of the ideas that were present for the Russian Revolution, for the Chinese Revolution. And the thing is, it became very evident to Huey Newton that materially the situation had changed, right? And globally the situation had changed. So there was a time and a place where saying a national liberation struggle makes sense, right? And that made sense during like the era of competing imperialist powers prior to World War II. It made sense prior to sort of the neo-colonial takeover, but what we saw, which changed since the time where that sort of original theory was formed, was instead of competing imperialist powers, you pretty much have one imperialist power. You have the United States, right? So you have consolidation of the world under one imperialist power, right? That really changes the way that operates, right? And what we also saw was the rise of neocolonialism. What we see is that countries are able to gain their independence. Nations, people are able to gain, some level of nominal independence, and immediately what happens is that economically, politically, they become puppets to the empire, right? So what we saw is that the empire was able to adjust itself in the way that it operated, such that even if a people was able to create liberate themselves as a nation, they still lived under imperial control ultimately, right? So I think that's where the change comes in, especially when you think about this happening during the 60s and 70s. Like, he's actively seeing this happen. He's actively seeing, exactly, right? He's seeing in real time. He's seeing like this, people are nominally engaging in liberation struggles, winning independence for their nation, and they're still not free, right? Yep. Because of how imperialism has restructured to deal with that problem. So I think that's what it really comes down to, and that's where we have to change the way that we operate, because again, imperialism is a very different animal than it was when that original theories of revolutionary nationalism and revolutionary internationalism were created. That's kind of how I see it.
Which gets us into a very important topic of intercommunalism. And I was juggling about how I want to segue into this very, very important pivotal point of theory in the Black Panther Party ideology. And I found a video that I feel is a great elevator into this topic. So I'm going to play this video, and I want you all to absorb it, and we'll talk about why it applies to intercommunalism. Here we go.
Gaza is such an outrage. It's not because what is happening to Gaza is the worst thing that has ever happened to humanity, or is the worst thing that is happening to humanity as we speak. Sudan has been at the 5th stage of starvation for a year. Gaza just got to the 5th stage of starvation. What makes Gaza so gruesome, so awful is that it is televised. The world cannot pretend like they don't know anymore. It's not somewhere isolated in Africa where the few with black skin that are able to get out is screaming at the top of their lungs, hoping that somebody will hear them. Everybody knows about Gaza. Gaza is a case study on what human beings will do when it is unquestionable that people are suffering immensely. It is the hope that Africa has been holding on. It is the hope that Africa has been fighting for. That if we could just get people to pay attention, if we could just get people to see our suffering, if we could just get people to see us, then it will be over. Gaza disproves that directly. It severs the hope of millions of people for so many generations. That's why Gaza is so gruesome. That's why Gaza is so awful. It televises children, babies being eliminated in the worst ways ever. Their pictures, their videos, everything mass scale. Everybody knows, everybody's seeing it. And this is the best the world can come up with. That's what makes this so bad. It tells us the current state of humanity, the definition of humanity. That's what this case study is showing us. As of this timeline in humanity, humans have not evolved to a point where they're motivated enough to stop suffering for the sake of suffering. It means that humanity has not reached what I would describe as herd empathy. And we're not evolved enough to be able to stop suffering, not even if it is the most vulnerable class of people. Children, babies, it's right in front of us. We're not motivated enough. We're not evolved enough to stop our own suffering. We cannot hide behind the term humanity anymore, because this is humanity. We are seeing humanity, and it is sad. Because now, where is hope for the people who are waiting their turn, who have been suffering for much longer than Gaza? Where is the hope? If Gaza cannot get the help that they need, even now when it is televised at such a mass scale, when people all over the world are crying for it to stop, if they cannot stop the suffering, they are on the 5th phase of starvation, and it is still going. There's still children that will die tonight. What hope does the rest of the world have? What hope does Sudan have? What hope does Congo have? That's what makes it so gruesome.
Powerful words, very provocative in the sense of its truth. And it challenges us with a very, dire question that the world is asking. And I believe that completely relates to intercommunalism. It goes to show what you two were saying. There's no such things as nations anymore. Because if there were such thing as nations, we wouldn't be seeing this. It means that there would be a multipolar balance. There would be some type of pushback. There would be some type of sovereignty pushing against the imperial sovereignty. But we don't see that. No. So, Bunchy, what are your thoughts on her words and her questions?
I mean, it's true. I hate to even reduce it to something so simple, but it's a very simple equation for me. I equate it to the same way I looked at people differently after Rodney King. I looked at people differently after that. Why? Because this thing that we kept telling y'all is happening, but you didn't believe us. Now it's on TV in front of everybody. You all see it with your own eyes. And yet, the response hasn't changed. In fact, it's worsened in some ways. And I feel the same way in relation to Gaza. It seems as though the more attention that it's gotten and the more publicized it's only become a worse, a more dire situation. And it's only proven that, as the sister just said, it doesn't matter All the time they kept saying that we could just tell people, we could just show people. But this is proof positive that doesn't matter. That holds no weight. Especially in a place like America. Like America is the perfect example of reactionary intercommunalism. Like if you take revolution out of the concept completely, America is reactionary intercommunalism all the way live. You have these small, intricate bubbles of elites that run industry, that control production, control all of the means of production, then control the lives of the people who do the work to produce. I don't think people recognize what happened in the 70s. When, like in the 70s, the things and the ways that the economic, especially the economic relationship of the world changed over during that time up to now. That's why you see something like BRICS as even being a possibility. None of this would be possible unless America had done what it was doing. The actions of imperialism from here, from the imperial core, from right here, spread across the whole globe. Anywhere we ever been to war, we still there. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. So yeah, she was absolutely right. It doesn't matter what you show a person. It doesn't matter what, like at this juncture, the only thing that's going to change is if you fundamentally and materially change a person's mind and show them. Like you have to show them up close and personal and make it affect them. It's the same thing I always say about this whole situation in Gaza. We all feel terrible about it and we all want to say something about it and we should say something about it, but don't ever fool yourself into thinking those words you say behind your computer keyboard or that you type on your phone, don't ever think that it's saving anybody over there. You need to create awareness, but you're not saving anybody with that.
And there's nobody to beg. There's nobody to beg.
Exactly. Nobody. So when you say that and you say, oh man, free Palestine, but Gregory down the street from you just got killed by the police last night. And Miss Gonzalez, her kids can't go to school safe because they're scared ICE is going to jump out and take them. What are you doing about that? Yeah. Don't get me started, man. But I'm just saying. But yeah, she's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. That is the that kind of is what it boils down to for me when I view the world and imagine intercommunalism in a revolutionary sense working in the way that it's supposed to. Everything that I see now is the abject opposite of that. So yeah, I feel
it goes to show that the system will do what the system wants to do, regardless of your feelings, regardless if you see it, regardless if you beg, if you cry, you vote, you petition, you write your local senator, it's morally wrong, ethically wrong. It doesn't matter. The system is going to do what it wants to do. And everything else is just aesthetics, purely aesthetics. Doc, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think what I see is the thing about empathy, the thing about humanity, right, is we talk about these sort of ideas and we can get upset about it all we want, right? We can feel any kind of way about it. And we might even get to the point, right, and many of us do, where we're committed enough about it that we're like, I will do, like, you know, people will say, you know, I'll do whatever I need to do to end this, right? I'm on board with action to end this, but then they have no idea what to do, right? And what it comes down to is we need to understand that this is, you know, it's not about expressing our empathy. It's not about what we feel. It's about having a strategy, right? And that's what intercommunalism is about, right? Because this is not, it's ending genocide, ending imperialism, right? Ending the violence that is leveled against the people worldwide. It's not a question of our feelings. It's a military question.
Exactly. I had this epiphany the other day, or this past week. I've been having a lot of epiphanies, and one of them is like, what is the biggest advantage, one of the greatest advantages that the ruling circle has over us? And it's simply the fact that the ruling circle knows it's at war with us. We just don't realize that we're at war with it. We have not woken up to the fact that we are in a very military war. We're not talking about as a euphemism. This isn't a culture, just a culture war or a psychological war. No. it is very much a military war, meaning they will kill you, they will sabotage you, they will play dirty. There is no rules. And we haven't woken up to that fact that there is no rules right now. We are at war. And the first, at least the first step of winning a war is realizing you're at fucking war. And that was the epiphany that hit me.
Absolutely.
It's like, that's it. We don't realize that we're at war, because the ruling circle is clear. They are very clear with their goals. They know exactly what they want. They know exactly that they're at war with us. They know that we're the enemy. We just haven't figured out that they're the enemy yet, but we're getting close. We're getting very close. Every day that goes on, as we see the right fracturing, where we saw the left fracture last year when the Democratic Party was in charge. The left was fracturing like crazy because the true leftists, the true people who have empathy and got into left-wing political discourse out of sheer empathy for their fellow humans, they took a concrete stand. I am leaving the Democratic Party because they are financing and funding a genocide. No matter how much they were in love with the Democratic Party before, no matter how much they hated the Republican Party before, it didn't matter. Their red line was killing children. And now we're seeing the very same thing happening in the right, in the Republican Party, as Trump has made it very clear that he works for the ruling class. So what do you have? You have this growing mob of angry people, refugees from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, now collecting together, intermingling, and asking the question, what the fuck do we do now? And my answer to them is, and it will always be my answer, the Black Panther Party and the Panther Party. That's what you do now. So that being said, the answer to the greatest question that I've been dogged with this whole time, when I tell them to leave the Democrat and Republican Party, what do you propose, Mark? So the Black Panther Party, you guys have a very clear goal in mind. And it's manifested in the form of a lot of programs, starting with you're just serving your fellow human being. Bunchy, since you started the Black Panther Party and revived it again, resurrected it, what has been the core goals locally, like the actual physical things that you guys do?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. Not really.
I know it's a lot because you've been busy and you're drained. Like, oh man, where do I start? I know you're tired. I know you're drained.
Well, some of it's a lot of it is born in a moment to address an immediate need. Some of it is more long term. So I mean, like our more successful programs, Feed the People, community political education, even community self-defense class, all of those meet immediate needs. But in a sense, they meet immediate needs with long-term ramifications. And that's kind of been the goal, to say, hey, we can do this thing. And as a matter of fact, let's put our heads together and figure out a way to do this thing powered purely by the community. And once we do that, then we can say, hey, you know what? Matter of fact, you guys have been here running this with us the entire time. Guess what? Go ahead and do it. Now we can go build something else, because now you don't need us here to do this. We can still make sure that there's security present, but it's about building something sustainable for the people to create a new model to live by. See, the problem is people keep trying to update the existing model. When in all actuality, it's kind of like when a car is past the point of repair, but you keep taking it to get it fixed. Fix this little thing, put a Band-Aid here, put some duct tape here, and just keep rolling. Sure, it works in the short term, and it may give you satisfaction in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to just have to replace the car. At this juncture, we have to replace the car.
Yes.
So that goes back to what you would just say. People have to become comfortable with the concept of replacing the car. Oh, I have to come to terms with what I believe to be the way politics and the government is supposed to function, the way that I've been taught this in my entire life. I have to come to terms with the fact that this is wrong. It's not operating for my best interest or the best interest of the masses of people. Okay, now the other thing that I have to remember is the same documentation that I look at that give you this power to keep me in this fearful place also tells me that I have a right to undo what you're doing if I don't agree with it. That we have a right to undo it. We have every right to stand on 10 toes down and say, this ain't it. Y'all gotta go. We're gonna build something new. And you gotta walk people there. They're not ready to run there. Every time they've been ready to run there, somebody tied their shoes together and made them fall, and now they scared. You gotta walk them there, unfortunately. So yeah, that's kind of what we're dealing with right now.
Doc, your thoughts, what's been your experience since running with the Panther Party and doing those survival programs, the community political education, the community defense? What has been your reflections and the successes that you've seen in doing so?
I mean, so the majority of my involvement relates to political education. You know, that's kind of where I fit in with most of it.
And you're a good one you are. I just want to make it very tell the audience that I have learned so much from you since I joined. Your wisdom, your understanding of revolutionary history has been very transforming for me. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I appreciate it. No, so I think that for me, the biggest things, I mean, really, you know, as much as the community political education it's the most important thing, right? Because truthfully, our job is to get everybody to get it, right? Our job, the job of a revolutionary vanguard is to awaken the class consciousness of the people, is to awaken the consciousness of the people to where we are, to what's actually, what the forces that are really shaping their lives are. You know what I mean? And why things are the way that they are, and why things can change, right? And understanding that those are kind of the same reasons, right? That the issues, the things that make this system exploitative and oppressive and harmful and unsustainable, right? Create opportunities for change, right? We have a system that thrives on the exploitation of human labor, right? And in order to exploit human labor effectively, what does it have to do? We have to cooperate, right? As workers, as exploited people, we have to cooperate to produce the things that the ruling class is going to then, make us buy back from them, right? And make us work for them in order so that we can buy back the stuff that we built, right? But in order for that to work effectively, we have to all be working together. We have to actually be working together, across industries, across continents, right? So in the very way that it exploits all of us, right? It brings us all together, puts us together, connects us through lines of commerce, through lines of industry, and makes us cooperate, right? And that builds pathways that we can use to organize against the system too, right? I think that the biggest successes, again, honestly, when I have a conversation with someone, when I am in community education, or I am, speaking to someone in community, and they say like, okay, yeah, I'm sold. I want to join. That's a huge part of it, right? Or I want to get involved, right? When we see that number growing, the number of people who are interested in what we're doing growing, and when we see people getting it, when we see the qualities of the questions that were asked improve, I think that's a huge benefit, right? I think that when people start to recognize, it's sort of like that video, right? Where we're talking about like, where is the empathy? Where is the, people have operated under this idea, and I think even a lot of people on the left operate under this idea that it's going to get so bad that it's just not going to work anymore, right? That everybody's going to say like, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. We're not putting up with it anymore. Now we're going to go do something. Now there's going to be a revolution. Now this can't keep going because it's gotten so. It doesn't work without a plan, right? So, and what it comes down to is us demonstrating, giving the people a revolutionary analysis of the situation, right? And telling them, and we have to start there, right? We have to start with, this is what's actually going on here fundamentally, and here's every aspect of it. And it gets exhausting, and people don't want to hear it a lot of the time, because a lot of the time people are like, okay, well, you're talking about stuff that happened a long time ago. I'm talking about what's happening right now. You know what I mean? But you have to start there, and you have to give the full context, right? Because we don't just need to, there's this idea that if you see what's happening, if you know what's right, if you say, like, I want everyone to be loved, I want everyone to be accepted, I want everyone to be cared for, I want everyone to be free, and then you see that these things aren't happening, right? Then you're going to, and then you stop it, right? You say, like, I'm not going to put up with that, and you get angry and you decide to do something about it, right? That's all you need, right? All that you need is to know what's going on and to have that humanity, right? But the thing is, like, that doesn't develop a strategy, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't, in order to understand, in order to win the battle, you need to understand what the battlefield is, not just that you're at war, right? That's, to your point, right? That's the first step, right? But a lot of people recognize that. A lot of people will recognize, as things escalate, naturally they will recognize that we are at war, but they need to also understand what the battlefield looks like. They need to understand how the enemy is organized. They need to understand fundamentally what is going on. And they need to understand, most importantly, that they need to understand, right? That it's not enough to be angry, to be spontaneous, and to just decide, hey, let's go do something. I think a lot of people on the left right now are more focused on, like, let's go do something so we can go say we did something, right? Yeah. No, we need to be organizing, right? The organization needs to happen before the activation, right? The education needs to happen before the activation. And if what a revolutionary organization is doing, if the bulk of what it's doing is educating the community, just educating the community fundamentally in what is going on and what needs to happen to get out of it, that's how it should be, right? So yeah, I think that seeing more and more people come around to that way of thinking, I think there's more and more people coming around to, especially people who are already invested in sort of these resistance struggles, recognizing more and more that it's not about just getting angry and doing something, but it's about being organized, being informed, and having a sound strategy, and then really doing the work and doing the research, right? Recognizing we can't just be righteous. We have to be disciplined, right? Disciplined, studied, and organized again. The more I see people coming around to that way of thinking, I think that's where I think the greatest success is that we have.
Yeah. However, we have an enemy that is, we have an enemy that has its own strategy for thwarting. I can't say that word though. Thwarting that concept of understanding what is the problem. And I'm going to play this video. This is from somebody that I follow. She's not well known, but she does some great takes. And this is the problem that we're running into when the left does at least begin to try and mobilize and try to get their peers and their coworkers and their contemporaries to mobilize with them. Here we go.
There is still people that like Gavin Newsom. Stop that. Aren't we done with that? I'm on the side of TikTok where we don't fucking like that guy. You know he's beating up protesters in LA, right? Like, sure, not personally. He doesn't want to mess up his hair. He's a fucking prick. Dude, a Zionist fucking prick. No, this girl called him Daddy Gavin, and I'm like, shh. No. Like, you have daddy issues if you think Gavin Newsom has fucking daddy energy. Okay? That's not daddy. Not to be a fucking bitch, but it's not like I tagged them, so it's fine. Like, stop trying to make Gavin Newsom happen.
Okay. I have to add some levity in this conversation because we're talking about a lot of grin topics. I thought you'd like that, boss.
She's hilarious.
She is hilarious.
She's hilarious. Oh yeah.
But it's broaching a very important topic. The ruling class is going to give us a solution to the problem. And this is the battle we're fighting. We're fighting two fronts, at least ideologically right now. We're fighting fascism from Trump, and we're fighting the false solutions and the false hopes from the Democrats. And it is exhausting to fight these two fronts because we have to try and keep the left, solidified in the goal of revolution and without losing them to some type of seductive ploy by the Democrats or these photo ops that they do. Like, I think one of the most interesting photo ops that the duopoly has done was when Trump sent ICE in this very military parade type of, stunt to MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. And then Mayor Karen Bass shows up on her horse galloping like the knight in shining armor and says, "No, you will leave this park." And then the photos, the photographers are right on her, and they're capturing the moment where she picks up the phone from the ICE agent and says, "You will leave now." And then the ICE agent picks up back the phone like, "All right, sir. All right, boys, let's roll out." Very, very scripted, very theatrical. But this is what we're up against. We are up against theater. So my question, though, that I'm coming back to is, how do we finally put to bed this constant successful tactic by the ruling circle to redirect the revolutionary energy, public outrage, and desire for action to electoral politics? People are angry. Everybody knows that something is wrong. Everybody wants to do something drastic. And then some guy or gal shows up at some rally, panders to that energy and disgust that's about to explode into something very real, pumps them up, and then tells them to go out and fucking vote. Starting the cycle all over again, leading to more false hope. How do we put a nail in that coffin once and for all? Help me out, boss.
I personally say, if anybody asks me, I'm not left wing or right wing. They say, well, how you're neither one? It's easy. When you go duck hunting, we go bird hunting. You don't shoot at one side of the bird, right? You're shooting to kill the bird, right? But in order to kill the bird, like, both wings got to die. And I'll be trying to make it as plain as I can for people.
Yeah,
I don't want to overcomplicate this for y'all. The whole bird got to die. Because otherwise you can't eat if the whole bird don't die, right? And they're like, well, yeah. I was like, so why is this a whole left wing, right wing conversation? The thing that you're forgetting is both wings are necessary in order for the bird to operate. So, in other words, the oppression that you're suffering ain't possible if these two wings aren't working together. Pay close attention to what you're considering to be your elite, because the people that you think are elite really ain't elite. They are being controlled by elite people. But you won't look past the WWE universe they putting in front of you and calling it politics to find the real answer. So once you do that, it makes it a whole lot easier to steer you clear of Democrat, Republican politics. At the end of the day, I'm gonna tell y'all a secret. Everybody get real close to the speaker. I'm gonna tell you a secret. At the end of the day, you're never going to be able to vote your way out of oppression. It's never going to happen. You know why it's never going to happen? Because even if the most of us vote for the same person, if the electoral college says somebody else won, your vote didn't matter.
Absolutely.
Just something for you to think about. You can tell anybody else the secret you want to after the podcast. Go.
That's awesome.
I think I think there's two things that came to my head. The first, and I'll briefly throw out the first one because it'll make more sense as I talk about the second one. But first is that Huey Newton wrote a really good essay called A Functional Definition of Politics. And what he essentially suggests, what he lays out, is that political power is representative. It's nothing. It's not it represents real power. That's all it does, right? So real power is material. Real power comes from land, control of the economy, or control of guns, right? It's military, economic, or feudal, right? Meaning it's real material power where you can actually say to someone, you didn't do what I wanted, so there are real world consequences happening to you now. That's in order to, right? Political power is meaningless without that aspect behind it, right?
Mhm.
It's only meaningful in that it represents one of those forms of power that's actually able to inflict a consequence when its decisions are not respected, right? So with that in mind, what we have to do to get people out of this mindset is we have to explain again how the system works. Because once we understand how the system works, then people are able to see what's happening and understand that these things are not happening because some guy who got voted in feels like it should happen, right? Mass deportations are not happening because Trump doesn't like immigrants. I'm sure he doesn't, right? Obviously, he's like a racist piece of shit, but that's not why these things are happening, right? You know, it's not about somebody's perspective. It's about these things are happening. You know, we don't have cop cities popping up all over the place. We don't have mass incarceration. We don't have genocide because somebody feels like that's what they want to happen based on their personal politics. They're happening because that's what the system needs in order to continue, right? And there's there are very specific systemic reasons for that. There are crises that capitalism is in, that imperialism is in, because of how it operates, because of in this late stage, right? And it literally has to do with where technology is at, where our productive capacity is at, right? So we have a system that's based off of the exploitation of human labor. What that means, it's based off of, again, because you don't control the means of production, because somebody else controls everything that you need to live, you have to work for them, and they get to pay you for less than what your labor is worth and take the difference. That's what, I mean, that's what the system boils down to, right? But the thing is, it only works, right, if enough people are employed, right, and employed to a level where their labor, even if they're being exploited, is able to buy them a certain standard of living to the point where they're going to tolerate it, and to the point where you don't have, you know, a huge portion of the population starving or committing crimes of survival, right? Or, you know, rallying against the system because they have nothing to lose because it's that bad, right? But productive capacity, right? Productive technology has reached this level where it is so easy to produce way more than what everybody needs, right? And it gets to the point where there's no reason to have that many people working. And in fact, if the capitalists, you know, if the imperialists globally employ everyone, they're actually losing a bunch of money because they're just producing a vast surplus of shit that they're not going to be able to sell, right?
Absolutely.
So what they have to do, believe it or not, because there's two things that they can do, right? Is that they can eat massive unemployment, right? And then again, people are you have this huge ever expanding unemployed population, who impoverished population, who you are either the state is paying a lot of money to care for them, which doesn't work for capitalism for various reasons. It doesn't work under the system, you know, because of the greed of the ruling class, and because if people see, lots of, you know, this huge portion of the population is not working and all their needs are being met, they're going to say, I don't need to work either then, right? I mean, you know, and you can't blame anybody for making that distinction at that point, right? They lose their ability to discipline the workers and keep them in line by saying you're going to get fired, right? And then you're going to be fucked, right? Because now they're like, well, then we actually have like a safety net, so that's not really the case. And that's why we don't have a safety net, by the way. It's not because they can't afford it or because the rich people don't want to pay taxes. It's because they want to be able to threaten you with that poverty if you get out of line, right? So they can either do that, which doesn't work, right? Or they deal with, again, this massive population who is starving, who is desperate, cluttering up all their cities with, you know, surplus people they have no need for. And of course, I don't view anyone that way, but that's how the ruling class views it, right? Who are turning to crime, right? Because that's the only way they can survive. Who are easily going to turn to revolt and revolution because they have nothing left to lose, right? So that's the second option. Or the third option is you can get rid of them, right? You can deport them. You can kill them. You can engage in mass slaughter, right? You can lock them all up, right? And so what we see, and guess what? Those things are profitable. Unlike those first two solutions I just told you, those things are profitable. those things can actually create new realms of exploitation where you can actually find an excuse to employ more labor and exploit more surplus value, right? So these increasingly brutal forms of oppression, there's a systemic reason that they are happening. And there's a systemic reason that until a revolution happens, they will continue to happen, right? And if people understand that on a broad level, then they begin to understand, that it doesn't matter who we vote for, right? The Democrats and the Republicans, right? That there can't be an electoral solution possibly because the problem is not anybody's politics, right? The problem is the system itself is designed to make this inhuman oppression a complete necessity.
And given the blatant investments that all the politicians like, and it goes, I mean, like, you shouldn't have to need this evidence, but if people who still believe in duopoly need this as simply a very obvious red flag and a smoking gun, is that all of these politicians, Democrat and Republicans, have investment in the companies that are benefiting from these horrendous policies, whether or not it's a policy passed by a Democratic president or a Republican president. Both parties have investments in these companies that profit from it. And this we're getting into the territory of something very disturbing revolving around these deportations. The deportations have been sold to the right wing as being necessary to reduce crime and get rid of the narco terrorists, as they call them. And they're arresting just regular people working at the Home Depot, grandmothers, people selling flowers in the street. Doesn't matter. They're just grabbing everybody. And what's disturbing is that we're not seeing the same amount of numbers being deported. Meaning, okay, these people they're grabbing, they're not being deported. Some of them are, but where's the discrepancy? And then we're realizing the horrific fact that we're building concentration camps, labor camps in the United States. These people are not getting deported. They are being kidnapped off of the job sites of small businesses, taken to a concentration camp where they are working for $1 a day, and they have to work 5 days just to make one phone call to the relative. That is the horrific reality that we are not being told. Like you said, this is very profitable. So all these people who are getting deported, the people who are grabbing them are getting $1,000 per head. Why? Why so much money? Because the company that's going to be working him as a slave in this concentration camp is going to be making 1,000 times that amount.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If it was about stopping criminality, why we ain't never seen ICE pull up to the MS-13 meeting?
Exactly.
I mean, they're criminals, right? That's what this is supposed to be about, right?
Where are the shootouts?
They're criminals, right? Yeah.
Where are the shootouts?
I mean, if I'm gonna give you $1,000 per, you're gonna have to earn that shit. You have to earn that shit.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm not trying to make light of it. I promise you, I'm not.
No. It's
at a
the
point
reality.
it gets ridiculous. At a point it gets so ridiculous to me, I have to laugh because I'm just like, yo, how do you not see this?
100%. 100%. Yeah, 100%. So now that we've kind of covered what the issue is, the question still remains, what do we do? So I can honestly say that with great pride, Colonial Outcasts has the most discerning audience. They are very diverse in ethnicity, religion, but one commonality just about everybody in our audience has is that they are very revolutionary and they are hungry for respectable and serious solutions as opposed to half measures and platitudes. They're advanced beyond that. What actions can they take right now, given their dynamic intelligence and willpower, to help the Panthers, Black Panther Party, and the Panther Party advance its goals? What can they do?
Well, I mean, the easy answer to that is, hey, come volunteer, do something. Come join. That's the easy answer. I mean, not easy in the execution of it, but it's the easy thing to say. The more realistic answer is, if you have the time to donate, to come volunteer to help feed people, to help get people in a situation. There's some people who don't come to community PE because they have technological issues and can't figure out how to use their stuff. If you have an older community member who lives near you who wants to be involved, don't give them a hand. It starts with building a community. That we use that word gets thrown around so willy-nilly all the time. Oh, community, it's for the community. Community can be what community? Where's your community? Can you show me your community? Can you point them out to me? Do you know who they are? Or is it just a word that sounds good to you because you hear everybody else using it? Once you've recognized and made peace with what your community is or is not, what you do to address the material conditions of that space will tell me everything I need to know about what you can or cannot do to help us. Because that's how it starts. That's how you, because that's why we're here. So if you're doing that, then you're already doing your part. I think, and for those who don't have, I'll be honest, I used to feel some type of way about people who sat on their couch and talked about it. I don't feel the same way about those people because I realize everybody's not built to do what we do.
Yeah.
If everybody was built to do what we do, recruiting and numbers would never be a problem because there would always be enough people. But those of you who are good at sitting on your couch and typing on social media and being selectively outraged about what you're selectively outraged about, then be that. Be the most outstanding version of that you can possibly be, because you may be responsible for firing up the next mind who will actually join the party, who will actually take a step to become a leader, who will actually go on the front line and stand up for what they say they believe in. So yeah, y'all are useful too. I used to didn't think so. I didn't used to think that way, but y'all are useful too. But that's where it starts. There has to be a dedication to the basic principle of forming an actual community before you can try to defend one. Once you define that, then I'll say it this way, and I don't mind saying it publicly because we say it in public in more than one place. There are three principles that I undoubtedly live by in regards to any single thing that I want to see built or whatever. That is define, develop, and defend. If you can define what your community is, you develop that community and what it's supposed to be, and then you defend it with every fiber of your being. Now we're talking revolution.
And to tack on to what he's saying, there's only so much we could talk about in one episode, but I will tell you that we will be rolling out the specifics of what you can do in a more elaborate form as we go along with our partnership with the Black Panther Party. As a Panther, I'm constantly developing myself, as Doc and Bunchy have challenged me to constantly develop myself and constantly sharpen my skill sets, constantly sharpen my goals and define them. It has definitely changed the trajectory of my life. It has given me guidance, and it has put me on a war path to come up and help the Panthers with real plans that every community can roll out in a very practical sense, not a theoretical sense. It's physical things that will bring us into preparation for the next phase of this revolution, which will be, in my opinion, all out rebellion. But we're not there yet. We're not prepared for it, but we have to get there. And I'm very much looking forward to more and more public discussions with you two about what we can do specifically. Doc, wanted you to tack on to that, what Bunchy said, what Bunchy was saying.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Bunchy said. I think it's very important to, and this stuff is stuff that I work on too, but get to know your neighbors, right? Get to know your community. Make sure that you are preparing locally, right? Things are going to start to happen locally. And think about, it's important to think about what you can control and what you can't, right? And understand how everything is connected. And that's where the intercommunal understanding comes in, and understand that, every place that we are able to put up a resistance against imperialism weakens it everywhere, right? And it helps everyone who's fighting, right? So again, getting to know your neighbors, building local defense networks, building local resource networks, right? And building that community, building that resilience, and being aware of, if you aren't, again, saying join the Panthers is the easy answer, but even if you're not there yet, be aware that we're here, be aware of what we're doing, tap into Community P if you can, right? Because as this escalates, we will be able to give more instructions that are more specific to the situation as the situation changes, right? But the other thing is you need to study, right? You need to study. And I know people don't like to hear this, but you got to read Marx. You got to read Lenin. You need to study. You need to understand dialectical materialism. You need to understand Marxist theory in order to understand what is happening and where it's going. And you need to understand this is really fundamental to anything that you're doing. This is in line with the idea of dialectical materialism and the understanding that everything is influenced by everything else, right? So when we're making plans, right, and again, you know what's going on in your community better than I do. You know what's going on in your neighborhood better than I do. So getting to know your neighbor, working together with them to build local infrastructure where you can start to meet your community's needs, where you can start to defend your community, right? And that doesn't just mean defend your community from the fascists, right? It doesn't mean go get out in any sort of struggle with the police. The number one way to keep police out of your neighborhood is to make sure nobody needs to call them, right? I mean, and
that's a huge thing that you brought up. It's like when we think of like going toe to toe with the police, and like when we think of like rebellion against the system, it cannot be purely reactionary of when the police are brutalizing that particular community. We have to start being proactive and preemptive by getting in the mindset that we don't need the police. We can police ourselves. We can be there for the community as a actual armed defensive mechanism. And Bunchy, you were saying you were giving a lecture on this about how community policing was such an effective alternative to the police. And a lot of, for some reason, like when you think about, like, say this, your red country folk, about how they used to have the mindset of governing themselves in their own neighborhoods, in their own communities. The mentality in these suburban or these urban or these rural environments, these country areas, was that we don't need the police. And somehow they were able to pull off one of the most genius psyops against like red areas with the Back the Blue campaign, which literally turned people who were once very anti-government and anti, police state into being pro-police state. So now we have that challenge of reversing that in the rural areas, So
I mean, yeah, it's a challenge, but I'll say this: I've been trying. I've been working on this lately, so I've been trying not to be so serious all the time. But this is a pretty serious statement that I'm about to make. But unfortunately, I can't stop smiling when I say it.
Go ahead.
The reality of the matter is, and this goes back to your war statement, what both of you actually were saying about war earlier. Let's be very honest about something, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and I don't typically, fuck it. It is what it is. The reality of the matter is, war is looked at through two different scopes. Those of us who do the studying and who've done and have heard the terminology a million times. Politics is war without bloodshed. War is politics with bloodshed. Cool. All of that's great. Here's the problem. The problem is, even when there is bloodshed, if it's unbalanced, is it really war? Because to me, that sounds more like annihilation than war. So there has to be balance in order for anything to exist in the way that it's supposed to. Even in war, there should be balance. Right now, it's extremely unbalanced. There's a lot of loss on one side of the war. I just think, balance is necessary, is all I can say. Balance is a beautiful thing. And I think that balance makes the entire world operate in the manner it's supposed to. So we, as a people, as the community, as the masses of disenfranchised people, we need to establish some balance with the police and, balance things out a little bit, So I'm
always wondering now that we are seeing some interesting phenomena happen in the right wing with the realization that the current administration is not their hero. He's not their champion. He has no intention of alleviating their economic situation or giving them any type of sovereignty as citizens, giving them any or expanding their freedoms in any way. They are waking up to that now en masse right now. And this is a good thing. This is a very, very good thing. This is what I call the golden window, where everybody is kind of getting on that same page. We're like, it's us versus the top. And I'm just wondering when they're going to start to realize that the martial arm of the ruling class via law enforcement, federal, local, municipal, and ICE are nothing more than the militant arm of the what I call the Epstein class, the same people who we now know engage in depraved acts in the dark are now at the control room of the most powerful law enforcement entity in the history of mankind. And when they will realize that that threatens them and their sovereignty, it threatens their children, it threatens their family. If they can pick up anybody with a mask on without showing a warrant and without identifying themselves, and they can throw them in a van like you would see in like a cartel movie or something, what makes them think that it's not going to happen to them? And that's what I want. I get it that they're waking up to the fact that Trump is not on their side and everything is corrupt. Okay. When will they connect that to law enforcement? And yeah.
I think a huge part of it has to do with the way that individualism affects the way that people see these issues, right? People tend to think of everything in this culture. People tend to think of everything in terms of the individuals doing things. Because we've been trained to think that way, because again, it separates us, it makes us easier to control, it stops us from seeing the whole picture, right? And along those lines, people, if somebody doesn't understand what's going on, if they haven't experienced this kind of oppression, right, and they view police or ICE agents or whoever might be, right, and they're able to see them as individuals and say like, hey, that's a guy who thinks he's doing the right thing, who's doing his job, who's trying to feed his family, blah, blah, blah. We start making judgments about this person as an individual. And then we can say like, hey, your resistance to that individual is unfounded because they're not a bad person, right? And this all comes down to this whole problem where we are viewing the situation and we are viewing what is happening in society about being about good people and bad people and not good systems and bad systems, right? And not saying like, regardless of what this individual's character is, we'll just put that aside. They are enforcing a toxic system. They are enforcing a system that is a threat to you. And that should make you recognize this person is a threat. This person is an enemy. And that's not a moral judgment. It's a material judgment. It's a scientific judgment, right? Yeah, I think that people really need to break out of that individualist mindset in order to see that. And then on the other side of that, and this is where we talk so much about self-defense and the notion of revolutionary self-defense. And this is the other side to what I was just talking about when it comes to breaking out and embracing a less individual mindset, a more community-based mindset, is understanding that an attack against my community is an attack against me, right? And understanding that if you are one of the people, meaning you are one of the exploited masses, right, then an attack against any member of the exploited masses is an attack on you, right? Because if you're being attacked, if somebody tackles you, if somebody is shoving you into an unmarked car, if someone is assaulting you, you're not stopping to think about like, is that a good guy? Why are they doing? Maybe they think they're doing the right thing. It doesn't matter. They're assaulting me. I'm going to do what I need to do to defend myself, right? And we're able to have that understanding when it comes to ourselves. We need to have the ability to extend that, right? And to break away from an individualist mindset that says me self-defense ends at like this physical body, right? And say like, when I am protecting a member of my community, when a member of my community is being attacked, when a member of the people is being attacked, when a fellow worker is being attacked, I am being attacked, and I need to defend myself, and I need to defend my community. And again, it's not a moral issue. I have moral beliefs about what's happening. Of course, I believe the system is morally wrong, but that's not where we need to go with this. We need to go with the vast majority of humanity has material interests in not being exploited and oppressed. And the people who are enforcing our exploitation and oppression are acting against our interests and are acting as a threat to us, as an imminent physical threat. And it doesn't matter if they're good people or not. It does not matter, right? It doesn't, what matters is they are an imminent threat to us that needs to be removed, right? And people need to see it that way. And people who, line dance to Copperhead Road need to stop and listen to the words.
Absolutely. Speaking of systems, so the topic or the arena that the Black Panther Party operates, one of the biggest, I guess, barriers to people in the United States embracing this type of thing, in a large part, has to do with geography. These liberation movements tend to sprout out in urban environments, coastal cities, or coastal states rather, Oakland, Los Angeles, and then on the East Coast, New York, whatever. However, a blind spot that has been for liberation movements is our focus on rural America and what the Panthers can do for all people of different geographical makeup and culture. And I picked this video, whereas it might seem a little random. I'm going to play this because I feel like this speaks to the heart of America and what they're going through and why that's relevant to the Panthers. Here we go.
Sure.
I'm just exhausted from it.
Every house requirement that they've bought,
These people live next to Amazon's largest data center. They're stealing the water.
they've leveled.
Joy and Jean Van Loo are a fifth-generation farming family in New Carlisle, Indiana, a small town with around 2,000 people in the northwestern part of the state. This is where Amazon is building their largest data center in America.
How's your water situation here?
Tainted. It tastes weird. It's just not the same.
Do you think it has to do with the data center, the construction?
Well, yeah, they have them two 24-inch pipes pumping water across the street over here. They're dewatering, as they call it, so they can put the foundations down.
They went through this process called dewatering because of Amazon's data center construction, where they were actually removing groundwater that people rely on here for their drinking water. And this pond normally would be full up, but now you can see it's been vastly depleted. The Van Loo family owns over 200 acres, but their new neighbor will consume as much power as 1 million homes, guzzling millions of gallons of water from the Kankakee Aquifer to cool hundreds of thousands of computer chips. It will serve the AI startup Anthropic, which is working to create an AI system that matches the human brain. And Amazon is its largest financial backer.
You don't think you can win?
No, you can't, man. They got better lawyers than we can get hold of, and then the town of New Carlisle threw us under the bus.
Still a lot of dewatering going on, even though they've been told they're in violation.
But, like I say, we're a little fish in a big pond.
Little fish in a pond that's been sucked dry by Amazon. Indiana is experiencing a data center invasion. 30 minutes away.
Okay, so I picked that video for a very specific reason, very similar to the reason that I wanted the first episode I did with y'all was solidarity with rednecks. And that is because the situation you just saw in Ohio would normally be perceived as a problem outside the purview of an organization like the Panthers, but I disagree. In fact, I see that perception as the problem. Because the Panthers are very much concerned with the well-being and liberation of all peoples, this situation in Ohio is precisely in the purview of the Panthers. So please explain to us why, if the Panthers expand in numbers and chapters across the country, this situation will be one of many arenas in which the Panthers will be of a benefit. Because I see this all connected. We talked about Gaza. We talked about police brutality in urban environments. But now we're talking about rednecks living out in Ohio, getting their water stolen by Amazon.
No,
Let's
that's not what we're
connect.
talking about.
Let's.
That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is capitalists doing capitalist shit. That's what
Yep.
we're talking about.
Yep.
So
Yep.
at the end of the day, they can paint any dramatic story they want to paint in front of it.
Yep.
The bottom line still comes down to Amazon, this capitalist behemoth, doing Amazon things. It's not very different from what Amazon is doing in several locations right here in Washington State, which is their home base. So I think that is the way in which you tie it together to make it plain to people.
Yeah.
So that way somebody in Kent, Washington, which may seem like a metropolis to this person who lives in this small town in Indiana, well, no, hey, Ohio or whatever, hey, nah, Amazon's in your backyard fucking your water up and destroying your life. Amazon's across the street from my house, fucking our water up and destroying my life. We have the same problem. We have the same enemy.
And
if we take the same course of action, we eradicate the enemy. But it has to be a unified action.
And connecting that to police brutality, what would happen if that community or that couple said, fuck this, I ain't dealing with this, like I want my water back, and they try to kick Amazon out of their county? The police will fuck them up. The same police that will fuck up black people for walking the streets or trying to form a breakfast for kids program. It's the same. They're just not at the other end of the barrel yet. So the concept of our community, our concept as a collective defense mechanism it can't just be in the fact that we're opposed to this expansion of corporations and we voice our opinion and protest of it. We have to be prepared for the counteract that happens when we actually take matters into our own hands. And that's why we have to view this as a war, but
yes. And you know what pissed me off? I just heard somebody say earlier, they were talking about, well, we should boycott this thing. The Target boycott worked. I said, Target's still open. No, it didn't.
No.
You were boycotting for the wrong thing. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a huge cross section of people in this country who recognize that for exactly what it is when they hear it. The problem is we've been see the brainwashing. I don't think people realize how deep the brainwashing in America really is. Like it's almost like a part of people's DNA when you think about it. The fact that someone would see that story and perceive that as being something being outside the purview of a Panther's attention span simply because it didn't happen in a big city. It didn't involve the police murdering somebody or anything of that, or someone being falsely incarcerated. All of those things, sure, front and center, we will be right there. But you have a clear-cut example of Doc said this one time, way back when we first started doing political education. And he was talking about owning property. And he was talking about the fallacy of owning property. I probably should say more clearly. And if this doesn't give you the net that you need to fall into to have that thought process with yourself, there you go. You bought this house and you've lived there how long? And you own the house and the land that it's on, and yet Amazon can come in with their millions of dollars, steal all of your water, steal the water, and then the water that's left is tainted. It's not quite the same. It's unsafe now. It's unsafe now. Yet, if you do anything to try to stop them from doing it, billy club upside your head, bullet in your chest, or you gonna sit in the cell for a while.
Yeah.
Babe, it's the land of the free and the home of the brave, baby. Live it up.
Yeah.
Live it up.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, and again, I have to be fundamentally, production is what almost all of the social issues that we deal with are based in how goods and services are produced, right? That's what it comes down to, right? Humanity's ability to produce, humanity's capacity for production is what separates us from animals, right? What separates us from wild animals, right? We evolved to have this ability to cooperate to make things, right? And that's it's in our brains, it's in our speech, it's in our hands, right? That's what makes humanity, right? And as such, it follows that our entire lives really focus around how that process operates. And when a few people control how everything is produced, and for what reason it is produced, it creates problems, right? And those problems can only be resolved through violence, right? Through organized violence, and that's why the state exists, right? And that's what it comes down to. And the only solution is to develop a system where production is democratized, where the people decide together what should be produced, and how and where and why, for the purpose of meeting human need instead of generating profits, right? And we have to have the control of production, or the democratic production of control production, in order to do that. And we need to have, we need to be able to engage in revolutionary processes in order to ensure that the military and state apparatus that may exist are going to enforce that democratic vision of production, and not a private vision of production that focuses on creating profits however it can, without really any care for meeting the needs of the people, right? And people who support capitalism and people who support the current system have this belief that a few people controlling the means of production is going to lead to lead to the best outcomes for everyone, right? Because the competition of the market, all of these ideas they have, right? But and again, there's a lot of theory there that they have, but what it amounts to is what makes more sense, right? Does it make more sense that everybody working together to actually plan production so that everyone's needs are met? Is it more likely to be successful if we start out with, we're going to plan everything to meet everyone's needs and not be destructive and to create something sustainable, or if we don't do that, right? Are we more likely to succeed if we plan out based on what we're trying to accomplish, or if we don't, right? And that's what it comes down to, right?
And also there's the misperception amongst people who they don't know what capitalism is. See, they think that capitalism means commerce. There's a convolution between definitions, just like there's a convolution between them and communism and tyranny. They think that they mean the same thing. They think that like literally, I've had conversations with right-wing people, and I asked them, "Give me the definition of communism. What you think? What you think that means?" They will literally describe corporate capitalism to me when they describe communism. I'm like, but see. And I looked at it in a different sense when I heard that. I'm like, wait a minute, this could be a good or bad thing. It's really bad that they're that fucking dumb. However, it is also kind of encouraging to know that it's simply a matter of words. Like, we literally just need to swap that. If I just swapped out the word, they would totally be on board. And I'm like, hold on a second. This is actually a very easy problem to solve when it comes psychologically to educating people. They just are they're afraid, they're scared, they're traumatized by the word socialism and communism, because then they think of being put in a gulag, or they think of some dictator, shooting them in a firing squad because they have too many toothbrushes. It's all kinds of crazy paranoid shit. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not that big. This is not that hard of a challenge for us, because if we can just talk to them on a street level, and I remember Addo making it very clear to me that one of the key strategies of the Black Panther Party and the Panther Party is meeting people where they're at, meeting them at where they're at in their own understandings. And I would like to read to y'all an excerpt from the To Die for the People, which I'm on. I'm a very slow reader. And there's a very good portion in here that I would like to read real quick. And this is Huey P. Newton, reflecting on the birth, the genesis of the Black Panther Party. When Bobby Seale and I came together to launch the Black Panther Party, we had observed many groups. Most of them were so dedicated to rhetoric and artistic rituals that they had withdrawn from living in the 20th century. Sometimes their analysis were beautiful, but they had no practical programs which would translate these understandings to the people. When they did try to develop practical programs, they often failed because they lacked a systematic ideology which would help them make concrete analysis of concrete conditions and gain a full understanding of the community and its needs. When I was in Donald Warden's Afro-American Association, I watched him try to make a reality of community control through Black capitalism. But Warden did not have a systematic ideology, and his attempts to initiate his program continually frustrated him and the community. They did not know why capitalism would not work for them since it had worked for other ethnic groups. So the problem that we have is first is understanding why of system, but it's also communicating these concepts without automatically scaring them away with big boogeyman words like communism and socialism. We haven't incorporated enough psychology into revolutionary thought and revolutionary discourse, and that's where I feel like the Black Panther parties has excelled so well, because they speak to people, and we speak street, because at the end of the day, the street is where reality happens. It's not,
you know what? You know, one of the biggest problems is, and something that I think is good that we have in this conversation, that it's going to open doors to more conversation. But there's a reason why intercommunalism is the answer, and of course I didn't come up with intercommunalism. We're simply spreading the word. So this ain't some cocky shit that I'm saying. What I'm saying is this: there is and you can see it for yourself in something as simple as the way that people, perfect examples. It just popped in my head. Sorry. The way that people interact with the houseless community is an example of what I'm about to say. The use of the term brokey. If y'all listen to hip hop music, listen to any hip hop dialect, they talking, you're gonna hear brokey. Someone's gonna be referred to as a brokey. But the problem is this: there are more people who fall into the categories of those things that you wish to belittle and make it seem as though that there's some strange oddity, that this person's broke, or this person doesn't have this thing or that thing, when it's more common for people not to have those things. But that is where the power lies. If you're able to organize and mobilize those people, you have the lumpenproletariat. The lumpenproletariat. Say it with me, ladies and gentlemen. If you can mobilize those people, you have the most unexpected army that you could ever possibly wield power over. They'll never see that coming, because these are the people who've been forgotten.
Exactly. And that's what my biggest disagreement with Marx was, and no shade on Marx, because the conditions were completely different at his time. The lumpenproletariat of his time were not at all like the lumpenproletariat today. I've always said that the lumpenproletariat are the key to revolution, and I actually see the proletariat as more likely not to be down for revolution, because they're still hanging on to the last bastion of comforts that is given to having a job and being able to pay rent. Whereas the lumpenproletariat is getting very much bigger, and they have nothing to lose. They have no comfort to hold on to. They want change. They want to taste the comfort, and they're willing to fight for it. We have to organize them to fight for it. I want to get in. This is a very unique episode in many regards, but the second reason why this is a unique episode is because this is the first time that I'm incorporating. I'm actually involving the audience. I put out a post on our Patreon to our private audience to keep it kind of internal and more intimate, for questions that they have for y'all. So I'm going to get into these questions in the comments, and we can fire away. We can keep this rapid if y'all want to. Y'all don't have to give very large answers. You can give a large answer or a small answer. It doesn't, whatever you prefer. But one of the questions at the very top, a simple basic question for the Black Panthers: what simple basic concrete steps, and this is by GB, can middle class people do to get communities moving in the right direction? I'm talking about communities where folks are in their bubble, not interested in connecting to it with their neighbors.
Oh, that's easy. First of all, stop fooling yourself into believing you actually a middle class. No such thing. But that's the first step right there. But even with you holding on to that, nonsense in your head. If you really want to do something to start to bridge gaps and to bring some type of solidarity with the rest of the community into your life, it starts with volunteering somewhere where you normally wouldn't be. Volunteer somewhere and have a conversation with somebody.
Yep.
Find out how the other half lives. Actually, probably more than half, way more than half. But find out how they live, and find out once you find out what the material conditions are of their lives that you can affect positively. Do that. That's easy. It ain't rocket science. It's easy.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to look at what issues exist where you are, right? So absolutely people who are in the middle class again, there is no such thing. You own property or you don't. You own private property or you don't. But and almost everybody is in that second group. But just because people are comfortable, because people's exploitation and oppression aren't happening aren't being acutely felt, number one, does not mean that there aren't problems that exist, right, within that community that can't be resolved, right, or can't be confronted. And number two, it doesn't mean that you're not being exploited. In fact, when we understand how exploitation, right, and again, exploitation and oppression are two different things, right? So we want to be clear about this. When I'm talking about exploitation, what I'm talking about is value of your labor that's being stolen from you. I'm talking about work that you're doing, value that you're creating with your work that you are not being compensated for, right? And there's another word for that, which is profit. But somebody who is a worker, right, who is a member of the proletariat, right, who has a good job, who's making six figures, right, if you're making that much, it's probably because you're making someone else a whole lot of money, right? So if you're trying to reach out to other people who are in that position, right now, if you are in that position, if you have a well-paying job, if you're able to live in a safe area where you don't have a lot of interaction with the police, where you don't have to worry as much about oppression, right? Somebody like that is going to be much less oppressed, but you may in fact be being exploited to an even greater degree, and that might be a place where you can start to talk to your neighbors and say, like, look at what is being taken from us. Look at what's being stolen from us, because we have you may have specialized skills that allow you to produce an enhanced amount of value, right? An exponential amount of value, and no matter how much you're getting paid, I guarantee you it doesn't even come close to the value that you are producing for someone else. So being able to recognize, like, even if I'm doing okay, there is a vast amount that is being stolen from me. And in fact, even the people who are the members of the proletariat who are doing better still stand to gain from revolution, right? Even if you're comfortable, you can be more comfortable in a post-revolutionary situation. And you also need to be able to think about, people care about their kids, right? We all care about our kids, and you need to recognize, like, even if I am in a situation where I have some degree or some job that allows me to live comfortably, that will not be a reality, probably for my children, certainly for my grandchildren, unless something changes right now.
Good clarification. So going down to our first question that popped up. And this is a very basic question. This is from Christo Stefan. What are your links to the original Black Panther Party? Bunchy, your father was a Panther, but can you go more into the ties?
I mean, my dad was a Panther. Overnighto's grandfather was a Panther. I hate to even use it, but I say it just for lack of a better word. I'll just say our advisors. Fuck that. Our OGs. Billy Che Brooks, who was a former minister of education for the Chicago chapter. He was Fred Hampton's minister of education. There's a few other OGs. I'm not gonna put everybody's name on blast right now because some of these gentlemen are, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, so I mean, we have whenever there's a question in regards to whether what we're doing makes sense in regards to the legacy of the party, and where the evolution of it should be at this point in time, I just call them and ask. And if there's something that we're not doing, we should be, we do it. And if there's something that we should not be doing, that we do, and we stop. Simply because when it's all said and done, time is different. Sometimes conditions change, but the reality of the matter is the legacy and the importance of the Black Panther Party does not change.
And one of my biggest frustrations with people who have tried to resurrect the Black Panther Party is it always seems to be this need to modernize or improve on something that doesn't need to be improved. I mean, everything needs improvement, but the improvements aren't for functionality. They appear to be just to get adapt to our current stage of capitalism and just be more accepted by society, or act as a nationalist type of group. And that's been frustrating to see. And it's like, no, you're not the Black Panthers. Don't, like, why are you calling yourself that? Like, you're a different, you're not even close. You don't honor the old legacy. You don't real, like it, like they set the precedent. Like if the COINTELPRO,
they don't understand the legacy.
Yeah, they don't understand it. I mean, think about it. The Black Panther Party, they had it under control. The problem was this COINTELPRO. That was it. Imagine if the FBI didn't even exist. Imagine how far they would have gone. Now this is a more technology-based question, and this is more, we're getting into some tactical stuff here. But how can we stay? This is from R.O. Binsings. How can we stay connected with each other, organized, be effective if we are tracked constantly on a device we need so much when we communicate with each other through social apps that are under the control of the enemy? A Faraday bag ain't going to cut it. There's got to be the physical resistance and cyber resistance. I feel like we're all going to be living in Terminator before he goes back in time to kill Sarah. How are we going to do this? So great question, Arrow Binsings. I think that's going to require a whole episode dedicated for that. I think it's a great question, and it's very important because how can you even get a resistance off the ground if the enemy is tracking you? And I put out a guidebook on our website that might address that a little bit, but we're going to get into that with the Panthers another time.
I'd love to have Cynthia for that conversation.
Yeah.
I'd love to have Cynthia for that conversation. Yeah, definitely.
This is from Fee. When so much of what is happening appears to be per Project 25, should we focus on learning that playbook to be more responsive? That's an interesting question.
I think that it's a good idea to be aware of what's in Project 2025. You know what I mean? I think that, and I don't know, the person who asked that question, I don't know what your level of development is, right? So don't take this any kind of way, right? I'm answering the question just to a general audience. What I'm going to say is, it's important to know the enemy's playbook. The most important thing that I really want to get through with something like that is that we need to develop general knowledge of the situation before we think that. Before we try to apply specific knowledge, right? So, again, building a foundation of knowledge of what American fascism is and where it comes from and why it's doing the things it's doing is going to be what's really key to understanding what's going to happen. Yeah, reading Project 2025 is going to help you know what they're going to do next, but so is just understanding at a systemic level, at a dialectical level, how this system operates, right? So what I would say is, yeah, absolutely read Project 2025, read all the, ideological trash and all the plans that that this administration is putting out and that groups connected to them are putting out. So that you understand where they're coming from and how they're thinking about the situation. But first, make sure that you have that basis of historical and theoretical knowledge, because we need to understand that the situation is always going to be dynamic and that they're going to have things that they're going to try to do, and we're going to have things that we're trying to do, and it's going to get messy. And understanding how that all works on a fundamental level, and building that general base of systemic revolutionary knowledge before we try to before we try to really analyze any one specific plan that the fascists might be rolling out is really important. I think people really, and this kind of ties into what you were saying with regards to, iterations of the Panthers that are really trying to modernize in a way that doesn't really make sense. Is just, it's good to be knowledgeable about those things, but just remember, like, you need to start at the beginning. You can't skip to the end. People want to skip to the end. People want to read about what's happening now and think about what's happening now, but you need to have that whole prologue there so that you can analyze it properly as well.
Thanks.
So, okay, this next question is it's 4 parts, and I know that I have dragged you all out in late hours in the night, and I know y'all have a lot on your plate. I'm going to do this one and then one last one that's really brief, more like a comment. This is from Jay. Number 1, how can I join and undergo any needed vetting? I've emailed the Washington State chapter a few times and am prepared to contribute in ways they need. 2, I'm a person of color and familiar with anti-Black racism within my community. Are there opportunities for cross-racial organizing that the Black Panthers would find helpful? And 3, do Black Panther folks know of programs in the Pacific Northwest that teach similarly minded, not Black POC firearms skills and safety? Number 4, if there aren't necessarily looking for new members, what concrete ways can BIPOC community members contribute / be involved? I feel like we answered a few of those questions there, but is there a question in there that y'all felt like we haven't answered yet?
Okay, let's not do it like this. 1, if you sent your application, I probably read it already. Get in touch with you soon. Just a lot of things happening right now. 2, let me just put this in a nutshell. I'm not gonna try to do that because I can't remember the numbers where questions came with.
No worries, no worries.
As far as things that you can do in the meantime and between time, for the first part of that question that I do recall, yes, we are actively seeking new members. That is never not going to be the case. And you being that you are in the Pacific Northwest, that is very helpful that you're local. So yeah, give me a second. I'll get you. I think I have a picture of the questions that you sent in. I will double check that with the information that I have and see if I can find your application and get in contact with you. But in the meantime, in between time, what you can do is volunteer at any Panther programming that may be going on. Come volunteer at FTP. Come to a community self-defense class. Come to community political education class. If there's something going on in the community that we are supporting, feel free to come. Mingle amongst the people. We would like to see how you interact with community members. You know what I'm saying? And also have an opportunity to interact with you ourselves to get a feeling for who you are. Because words on paper are one thing, and even everything that I could dig up doing your background check is one thing. But seeing how you actually interact with people in real life is far more important to me than anything on a piece of paper. As far as programs in the Northwest for there's a few things that are happening in regards to that. I mean, they are publicly acknowledged organizations, so I can say their name out loud. SRA is not a bad choice for learning gun stuff. Especially at least not the ones here in the Northwest that I've met. They're pretty cool, so they would be a good resource for that. We have a few people within the ranks of the party who could potentially do some stuff of that nature if that's something you're interested in. And they are certified feds, so fuck y'all, they can do it. But yeah, other than that, I think that answered all of the questions there. The door is open. If you're interested, just let's have a conversation. Come out, show your mettle, prove that your dedication is to the people and not to the name. Don't be dedicated to the Panthers. Be dedicated to the people. That'll take you everywhere you need to go.
And to answer the question about people who are not Black who want to join, well, we answered that at the beginning of the episode, where that's what the Panther Party is for. We are for all peoples. We are an extension of the Black Panther Party. We roll as one. We are comrades. We are brothers in arms. We're not allies. Understand that the Black Panther Party is not an ally. An ally implies that, we're like loosely, we'll try to be there, or we'll But no, like when you're a comrade, when you're a brother in arm and you're in combat, you're in the trenches together, and your comrade needs another fresh mag, and you throw him the mag, he's not an ally. He's your brother in arms. That's the core difference. And it's a very off-putting term, ally. I've talked to some white people who were turned off by that phrase, that like, wait, I'm just an ally, I'm not a brother. It's like, you know what? You're making a good point. Like people who are not black, who want to be one with the army, they get off-putted by that term ally. And I can kind of feel that sentiment, because they want to feel like they're a brother in arm or a sister in arms. And that's how we got to see this. When you're in the trenches, you're not allies. You are brothers in arms. Your brother needs another fresh magazine with plenty of bullets in it. You're going to throw in that magazine, and vice versa. There's no allies there. You know?
Yeah, throw in a magazine. We like to read.
Yeah. And by the way, we're talking about reading material, because we do not encourage.
I like to read. Yeah.
So this is a comment. This is just a comment. I thought it was funny. As a 71-year-old angry white man, I have more in common today with blacks, Panthers, or otherwise than with white oligarchs and Zionist jackals. Everyone should unite against these corrupt cocksuckers in power. So, very good comment. Absolutely. I thought I'd end on that. I thought I'd read the last comment. And by the way, y'all, we will be we'll be answering the rest of y'all's comments and questions in text version, and I will be sending that off to the cadre, and they can slowly answer these questions, and I'll copy and paste in the reply answers as we go along. So give us time on that. Great questions, by the way, y'all. I really appreciate the questions that y'all submitted in the comment section. Truly, I'm proud of the audience that we have. We don't deserve this audience. We really don't. I don't know how two veteran jackasses decided to form a podcast, and we got this great audience of like people with intelligence far beyond ours. But hey, fuck it, I'll take it.
Two jackasses.
So I'm going to leave off on this video real quick of Chris Smalls after coming back from being beat by IDF soldiers who boarded his ship in one of the last flotillas. They targeted the only black person on that boat and decided to give him some American style police treatment. But he had some very encouraging words to say that I happened to catch on a live that I screen recorded. Here we go.
And liberation is outside the scope of labor. Division is what capitalism needs to actually thrive. And the way they create division is not just by the propaganda, but by telling us, are trying to create fear and trying to create doubt. And when you have doubt, you lost half the battle right there. Right there, you're going to give up on trying to fight harder. You're going to give up on yourself. You're going to give up on even listening. And then the fear is easy. You know, the reason why people don't want to act is they're scared to go into prison. But if we realize that we can overcome all of these different obstacles as, once again, a collective, people ask me all the time, how the hell did I beat Amazon, a $2.2 trillion company, with a GoFundMe? When we beat Amazon, we had $2.50 in our account.
That was Chris Smalls. Oh, one other point I just want to make real quick before I let y'all go. It's a topic I forgot to address. And this goes along the lines of something that happened in Chicago that is very relevant to today. And I'm going to let me find this real quick. 1 second, guys. Let's see real quick. Where are you at? Okay. So I got the video prepped. The FBI's COINTELPRO program, if y'all don't know, if y'all ever watched the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, the FBI tried to pit the Chicago Black Panther Party against rival groups, especially the Blackstone Rangers, by circulating fake flyers and letters that threatened violence and spread disinformation. These tactics were meant to spark deadly feuds and derail Fred Hampton's attempt to unite poor Black, Latino, and white communities under the Rainbow Coalition. So that's how they did it, and it was successful. But the Black Panther parties, they pulled through, and they were able to use certain security protocols and forms of diplomacy that were able to circumvent these tactics. However, we are dealing with the exact same thing today, but the modus operandi is different. And here it is. There it is. That's it. That's what we are looking at today. That is the new flyer. That's the new tactic, the new COINTELPRO 2.0. They don't need FBI agents to distribute fucking pieces of paper. All they need is a bunch of phones, in an array of a bot farm to simply put racist comments, a racist comment from a quote unquote Hispanic dude towards the black community, or a racist comment from a Palestinian towards the black community, or a racist comment from a black person to the Hispanic community. It's just bots. 80% of the traffic we see online is bots. This is the new Chicago situation. And I just want to say that if we're not keeping up to date with the latest tactics and psyops, then we will fall victim to them. So any comments, y'all, my brothers? How do we protect ourselves?
I think that some of the core things are, taking a moment and not reacting emotionally to things that we read, especially without, verifying. Not getting into arguments online, right? 90%, even if it's a real person, you ain't gonna change their mind, right? You're not. If you're confronting a fascist online about a fascist opinion that they're expressing, you have one goal, right? Which is that assuming they're a real person, or assuming that a real person reads the interaction, right? You're trying to change the mind of somebody else reading that interaction. That other person, those other people who are seeing that interaction, they're not going to stop and scroll through 30 comments of you going back and forth with this guy. So if you see something that you really feel like needs to be corrected, briefly correct it and move on. When they hit you back with some bullshit, ignore it, right?
Yeah.
Do not get into these extended arguments online. It's just ego shit. Let it go. And then, like I said, it's all about production. The struggle is rooted in the realities of production, and understanding that reinforces this understanding that you need to know what the latest technology is, or you can't understand how the struggle works or is going to progress at all.
Right.
It's great.
Heck yeah.
Bunchy.
Use multiple devices.
Real quick,
Bunchy. Quit being suckers. Don't be crazy, people. Anyway, yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I want to go back to the story you told me about the man in the neighborhood that was cussing at you.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
You were cleaning up the neighborhood. It was a very inspiring story. I love that story. Can you tell it again? And how this relates to this?
We actually got back to doing a few Panther pickups this past summer. We're gonna try to see if we can expand it back out the way it used to be by the next spring. But we were out doing the Panther pickup. We were wrapping up, and this was over off of Sheridan in Tacoma. And there was a gentleman out blowing leaves, and I was already in my car. I'm about to leave, but I noticed that two of the comrades are still standing outside the car, and they're looking out towards the street, and I'm like, oh, they're tripping. What's going on? And then I turned the radio down and rolled the window down just to touch, and I realized they're yelling at somebody. And I'm like, wait, what the hell's going on here? So I get out of the car, and so they're going at it with the leaf blower guy, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go with this bullshit. But the biggest thing that was catching my attention was he was like, yeah, fuck Black Panthers. And I was like, wait, what do you mean fuck Black Panthers? Wait, hold on. How did we get here? Now, mind you, my initial response to this, okay, let me be very clear, ladies and gentlemen. I may speak well at times. I am absolutely positively a product of my environment. I'm from the ghetto, and there's no mistaking that. If you ever spend 5 minutes around me in person, you'll know. And so my first instinct was, oh, you hate Black Panthers? Well, let me give you something to hate. But then I stopped and was like, wait. That might be why he already hate Black Panthers. Hold on. So I started asking the question, hold on, man. Wait, why you say that? So he has headphones on. So this whole time they've been going back and forth with him. He ain't heard a word they said. He's just blowing his leaves, cussing out Black Panthers, and going on about his business. He removes the headphone and says, what did you say? I said, explain to me why you feel that way. Why did you say that? So he starts going into his spiel about new Black Panthers, and that he has a picture of his daughter sitting on John Muhammad's lap in the room. And I was like, oh, that just cleared up the whole situation. You got the wrong Panthers, bro. That ain't us. That's the new Black Panther Party. We new Panthers, but we ain't them new Panthers. We like new or the old Panthers. And you could have seen the heartbreak on his face when he realized how wrong he was. I literally think if he wasn't on some grown man shit right then, and he's in front of 3 other grown men, he probably would have cried. But he was like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, I didn't realize it." And he shook my hand. I don't think anybody's ever shaken my hand that many times. And the comrades he was arguing with were a little hesitant to shake hands with him. I made them do it, but they were a little hesitant to shake hands with him. But I understood why. But I was like, dog, y'all got to understand something. This is one of those times when you have to grasp a teachable moment and use it for that. We could have whooped his ass, but he wasn't going to learn nothing from that. It was just going to make him hate Black Panthers even more. What we earned from that? Well, guess what I got now? I got a bona fide reporter right here in this community. If anything go wrong, I'm going to know it as soon as it happens. And sure enough, 3 days later, phone rings. It's probably 11:45 at night. Hello? Hey, is this Bunchy? Yeah, this is Bunchy. Hey, this is D, man, over Sheridan. I met you at the park the other day. Yeah. He said, hey, man, it's about 20 police cars. And he was exaggerating a little bit. It was probably like 7 police cars. He was like, man, there's like 20 police cars up and down the street out here, man. I don't know what's going on, but I thought I'd give you a call. Thank you. We on the way. And from that moment forward, like he done moved him over there now. But from that moment forward, he was an avid supporter. He's donated several times to the party. Just from taking that moment, and as opposed, instead of being reactionary in that moment, really listening to what he was saying, because he was speaking from a place of hurt, and so it was best to find out where that hurt generated from, and try to find a way to deal with that, as opposed to just punching him in the face. Now, mind you, if I couldn't figure out the source of the hurt, he was going to get punched in the face, but we figured it out. So we figured it out. So it's all good.
You know why I was able to relate to that story so well is because that reminds me of when I was 18 years old. I was a Zionist. I just arrived in Jerusalem, filled with Islamophobia, filled with the demonization of like the Palestinians and full-on Zionist evangelical. They assigned me to my dorm floor. The Hebrew University assigned me to a dorm floor that was filled with Palestinian Muslims. And my first interaction in Jerusalem, I walk into their dorm floor and I see these Palestinian dudes smoking hookah, joking, yelling, eating hummus. And I say, what's up, you terrorist motherfuckers? I walk right in to their dorm floor, their dorm room. The first thing I say to these 5 dudes is I thought I'd make a joke and just be, whatever. And their reaction, it was kind of like you in a sense. It was like part of them wanted to whoop my ass, which is like a third of the room. The other third in the room was fucking laughing. Like, who the fuck is this white dude, American, walked in to our dorm room in our territory and called us a terrorist? And then the other like third just had like half and half. They're like, I want to whoop his ass, but this is kind of funny too. And instead of shutting down the conversation right now and then throwing my ass out the window from the second floor, they said, you know what? Why do you feel that way? Let's have a talk. And we got into it. We argued. We debated. We called each other names. We made fun of each other. But they offered me hookah. They offered me hummus. And then like in 3 hours,
that's a win-win.
3 hours, they deprogrammed about 3 years. And the first thing I said was like, I heard Islam means submission. And they said, to God, you dumb shit. To God, you fuckhead. You to God. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Like, well, I heard that y'all like to blah 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 blah. And they're like, Mark, listen to me, you dumb fuck. You dumb fucking shit. I'm gonna and it was just, and then at the end, and then what the thing about it was, even though I was full of bullshit, we were getting in heated arguments, we were cussing at each other. I'm like, damn, like arguing with these dudes is like arguing with a brother. I'm like, I really like these dudes. Like, who the fuck would put up with me? Like, there's nobody who gave me this time of day to like actually spend time to educate me and then put up with my bullshit. And they appreciate me. Like, beyond my bullshit, they actually like me. You know, they don't like what I'm saying, but they like my personality. And I'm like, damn, this is a very intimate moment. Like, I can't talk to random people like this shit, but these motherfuckers are sitting down and like sitting me down and educating me and then cussing at me. It takes a lot of trust to make fun of me. And I'm like, and then I wound up visiting all.
You're okay. We fix the bullshit come from your mouth, then you'll be okay.
And I visited their families. I visited their villages. Their mothers were like mothers to me. They're like, and then I'm like, holy shit, these, like, I can't believe it. The people that I was taught that were like the enemy are like, they would die for me. Like, what the hell's going on? And then you go through all these confusing emotions, but wait a minute, I'm supposed to be on the Israeli side, but then the Israelis are kind of like weird and sociopathic, and they don't really have a culture. They're racist as shit, and they all have mental health issues. They're all isolated. There's nothing there. There's no deep roots there. And I'm like, damn, like fucking these Palestinians, they're like they got a sense of code of honor. I want to be like them. Like, and I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like the Muslims, you know, and it guided my Christianity. Islam guided my Christianity. So anyways, the reason why I was able to relate to your story was like, it's like that. Like, they could have kicked my ass right there, but because they didn't. And then I think about the road I would have gone down had they not offered me hookah and hummus. Well, then what would my life been? I might have wound up like joining the IDF.
You wasn't gonna do none of that. I was thinking about the flight you was gonna go down if they didn't decide not to whoop your ass.
Oh, there's that too. So
I'm gonna be joining no I8 nothing. You go join the ER. That's about all that was gonna happen, bro.
And the news would have gotten a hold of like kind-hearted, accepting white person was thrown violently out of a window by savage.
You already know it. Yeah, they would have been infidels and all kind of bullshit. Yeah, you already know
all that shit. You know.
So, that's crazy. Wow.
Well, comrades, this has been great. I know I took y'all into major overtime, and I know y'all are tired and y'all have a lot on your plate and you've been dealing with a lot, but I appreciate this. This is a historic moment to, I guess, christen this partnership and get our audience familiar with the personalities behind the Black Panther logo, you know. Do y'all have any last words? I wanted to read this one last phrase before we end. I'll read this and then I'll give you all the last words on this. This is from To Die for the People by Huey P. Newton. This is on page 43. We are here gathered for the solemn purpose of formulating a new constitution for a new world. We must become even more conscious of who we are and why we're in these circumstances. We must change these circumstances and construct a new world which makes use of all the technology and knowledge we have accumulated. When we have developed a system that functions in the true interest of the people and established it in full, then the word work will be redefined as meaningful play. We will have eliminated the cause of all of our problems and live according to the Constitution of Revolutionary People. So, with that, I'll let you all close this out.
Doc, please go ahead.
You know, Fred Hampton said, you know, you have to say, you're going to need to say, I am the people, I am the proletariat, I am not a pig, and you're going to have to keep saying that. So, keep saying that to yourself. You keep saying it to the people around you, and read Lenin.
That part. Very good. I'll just say stay dangerous and be mindful of war. Be mindful of what war really means. Be mindful of what war really does, who war really affects, and then ask yourself if you are effectively participating in the war you say you are a part of. Then we can talk about it later.
Absolutely. Well, audience, our dear Colonial Outcast audience, I'm glad to introduce you to my family here. These are my bosses. These are the people that I have found a home with.
Don't say that.
I know you hate that word. All right, comrade. This is one of many conversations, and this is going to be a beautiful journey watching this grow. And our audience, y'all, I can't think of anybody better, more qualified to help us get this journey started than you. So I appreciate y'all tuning in. All power to the people, comrades.
All power to
All
the
power to
people.
people.